What is up, everyone? And this week we've got a special video because we are talking all about Andromeda. So if you've been in the metasphere at all for the past 3 months, you probably have potentially heard this word before, and maybe you're not aware of what it actually means. And so that's what I'm going to be covering today. It is an algorithm update, and a very important algorithm update at that. So usually I don't do presentations like this or videos like this on my channel, but this one I think it is a little bit more academic in style. So I do have some slideshows right here, and let's go ahead and dive right in. So let's understand this update. So all of this is straight from a blog post produced by Meta. So this is not me saying this. This is coming straight from Meta when they describe what it is. So they say Meta Andromeda is an innovative end-to-end hardware, software, machine learning co-design system introduced in 2024 with Meta Training and Inference Accelerator and NVIDIA Grace Hopper Super Chip. This more efficient system enabled a 10,000x increase in the complexity of the models used for ads retrieval, the first step in the ranking process where we narrowed down a pool of tens of millions of ads to the few thousand we consider showing someone. So lots of technical speak right there, super weird phrasing and not very helpful for the average person. But basically, if I were to summarize this paragraph right here into a condensed, simplified version, what this is saying is that the algorithm is capable of processing way more data than it could before. It could already process a lot, don't get me wrong, but now that has expanded 10,000x, which is very difficult to even envision that. So with that much more processing power and ability to analyze data and information, then it can do more things in terms of getting in front of the right customer with the right message. So imagine having a personal concierge who knows your taste so well that they don't just understand that you covet shoes, but that you like to wear red flip-flops at the beach. So this is from a separate blog post in March of 2025. So here is where that shift is starting to take place, and you can kind of see what they're getting at right here. So before, right, you could say, hey, you like shoes, you pick the shoes targeting, and now we're going to show you an ad about shoes. That's cool, that's good, that is a little bit of a match, but how specifically do you know me beyond the fact that I like shoes? Because, there's a gazillion different types of shoes. Do you actually know what I like to wear? So here it's saying not only is going to know what you like to wear, but what color and when you like to wear. So that's a big shift from how the algorithm used to work. A lot more specific matching going on there, which is really interesting. And with the rise of AI-enabled advertising tools, the focus has shifted from niche targeting to creative diversification as the best lever to find the most relevant audiences. So this is probably the most important part of all. Here they are specifically saying that they're moving away from traditional targeting. And we've kind of already seen the writing on the wall with this. They have eliminated thousands upon thousands of different targeting options over the last 2 to 3 years, maybe even 5 years. And, in general, they've really been pushing just the use of advantage plus targeting, right? Meaning you don't do anything with the targeting, you just leave it wide open and you let the algorithm do its thing. So here they are confirming that right here. And beyond that, they're saying that the ads are the things that are going to be doing the targeting. So you might think yourself, well, how am I going to get in front of the right customer if I'm to have just this wide open targeting? What it's going to do is that the ad, it's going to pair up with the right information and the right person based upon the copy, the creative, the video, whatever it might be. And then based upon those details, it'll get in front of the person who's looking for red sandals when they're going to the beach, and it'll show your red sandals ad to that person. Whereas before, you couldn't do that, right? There's no targeting setting in there that says target people who like to wear red sandals at the beach. But when you have open targeting and you happen to have an ad that is advertising red sandals, then it'll get in front of that person, right? And so that's something that we could never do before, but now we can. So it's a really, really big shift in terms of how we need to think of campaigns. We need to obsess way less in terms of targeting and obsess way more in terms of our creative diversification. As businesses upload more and more creatives to support a diversification strategy, Meta Andromeda works behind the scenes to power more complex models that allow Meta to pick the right creative to deliver more personalized ads that are relevant and interesting. So that kind of just drills the point home of what I just said. Previously, there's a lot of people we could not get in front of because there was no targeting setting to get in front of those people. So for all of my business friends who always struggled with being in a niche where there was very little targeting options, let's say you're in the basket weaving niche, I don't know if there is a basket weaving targeting option there, but let's pretend that there isn't or there never was, right? And so, people in that space, they'd always be like, oh, meta ads, they don't really work for me because there is no basket weaving targeting option. Well, guess what? This Meta Andromeda update fixes that, because now you actually just do open targeting. You don't do anything there, and your ads will do the targeting for you as long as you have a good creative diversification strategy in there, which I'll get more into in just a bit in terms of what is actually a creative diversification strategy. So it opens up a lot of opportunities for industries and business owners that previously didn't have the best targeting options. What is meant by creative diversification? So concepts and angles, right? Different problems and solutions, pain points, testimonials, product demos. So when you hear the word creative, your mind automatically goes to images and videos, right? And yes, that obviously certainly is part of it, but it's the whole ad, right? So here we're talking about the ad copy, and this is kind of like the struggle of this, is that there is kind of no creative way or useful way to have people think of both things, right? Because if you say ad diversification, people will probably think of ad copy. If you say creative diversification, you'll probably just think of images and videos. I keep on using the phrase creative diversification because that's how they're phrasing it. But again, when we're talking about this, we're talking about everything, right? It's not just the images and the videos, it's the headlines, it's the body copy, all that kind of stuff. So concepts and angles, formats, short video, long video, static image, carousel, right? Everything that you can do in that department. And also personas, right? So people are going to be in different stages, and you can still market for the same product, but you have to speak differently to them. So an example of that is if you're a golf company, and let's say you're targeting both beginner golfers and also experienced golfers that are maybe even semi-professionals. Let's say you have a putter that they can both benefit from because the way it's designed, and by the way, I'm not a golfer, so I can't go into kind of like any kind of engineering examples of why there's a putter that is great for beginners and experts. But let's just say there is. Obviously, the way that you're going to speak to those two audiences has to be very different, right? Because what matters to beginner is going to be very different to what matters to an expert, yet you still have the same putter that they can both benefit from. So those are going to be two completely different messages. So this is what is meant when you hear that phrase creative diversification. Don't just make the mistake of thinking, oh, it's only images and videos. It's all of this right here. So let's visualize this. Here was the old way, pre-Andromeda, right? So you would have a bunch of ads typically. I know some people, I would go into accounts and they only had one ad, but in most cases, most businesses had multiple ads and you were targeting an audience. And what would probably happen is that there was one ad that would get like 95% of the budget, and that's kind of how that campaign would perform and optimize over time. And in order to expand that, you would then launch to a different audience. So let's say this is audience A, then there's audience B, and then you kind of go through the same process. And so then that one, maybe it's a different ad that gets the majority of the budget. Okay, great, cool. So this ad is good for this audience, that ad is good for that audience, and you just kind of kept on repeating that process right there. That was the old way. The new way is that the ads are going to do the targeting. So in most cases, again, I'm not saying targeting is 100% dead. There are certainly circumstances where you still want to use targeting, and I'll probably talk about that in a separate video because it does relate back to this, but I don't want to confuse and throw too much you all at once. But let's just stick with, in general, for the most part, 80% of the time, you're just going to do broad general targeting. So then the ad is the one. So audience there on the right-hand side, it's all just general targeting, open targeting right there. And then you have different ad sets, and then in each ad set, there are different ads. And we can think of those grouped ads as concepts, right? That's kind of how you want to be thinking about this. Like, okay, cool. Here's what I want to be creating inside of this ad set. Here's the concept that I want to put together. You launch that, and then it's going to pair that with the right people. So here's an example of that. It's very easy to do this with an e-commerce brand, lots of products and stuff like that. So this is from a company called Black Diamond. They create outdoor gear. I own some of their products. I like them. And so here, this concept is for their jackets. And so here's 3 different ads I just pulled that they have. And here's the magic of it, right? All 3 of these ads are going to get results with different audiences, right? But it's going to know who's going to respond to what ad. So for me, personally, I would 100% just scroll past these first two right here. Like those don't speak to me in any way, shape, or form. But I really do like this second one right here. If I saw that ad, I would definitely stop. I would definitely read the ad, and there's a high probability I would click over and check out the product. And so it's going to know that kind of stuff. Who responds to what kind of ad? Same thing here with their trekking poles. I probably would not respond. Actually, no, I for sure wouldn't respond to these first two, but I like this second one. So you're probably starting to see a theme that, like, I like to see products in action in the outdoors. It puts me in there and I can visualize myself using that product in that specific scenario. That's what personally speaks to me as an outdoor enthusiast. And so, I would personally respond to this one, but other people would respond to this and that. And it's going to go out and find those audiences for you, right? So again, these are all just general audiences. I don't need to worry about using targeting too much at this point. And then same thing here with their backpacks. I'm going to go ahead and move all this stuff right here. So, of these three, this is the one that speaks the most to me right there. Not that this one doesn't, but I kind of just like the green. This guy's in a forest. This one looks more like a desert. I like forests more than deserts. And so again, Andromeda's going to know that. So it'll probably serve me this ad as that's the one that speaks to me more. So this is how you want to be thinking about it. And so a lot more time in terms of what ads you're going to be launching, a lot less time in terms of what targeting audiences you're going to be going after, because that part has been simplified with the Andromeda update. All right, so let's also talk about what isn't creative diversification. And here is a prime example of that. So 3 images of me. I have the same color in each one. And then I have headlines 1, 2, and 3. Obviously, they wouldn't actually say that, but I'm just kind of driving a point home here where all I'm doing here is making a small tweak to the headline. Same background, same image, 3 different images. That right there is not going to move the needle for you. That is not creative diversification. There's just not enough differences right there. So here, when we're talking about this, we're not talking about small tweaks right here. We're talking about large differences between the ads. That's how you want to start thinking about this right here. So even if I were to change the color between these 3, that still wouldn't be enough, right? So let's say it was the same image, 3 different color backgrounds and 3 different headlines. Okay, that's a little bit more diversification, but still not a whole lot. The images and the videos that we output, we need to be testing large differences, not small differences right there. So this is very, very important. You might feel like you're doing creative diversification, but you're not. And so the same thing will apply to your ad copy. We're not talking about changing a headline or just changing the first 2 sentences of the body copy and then the rest of the same. They all should be pretty different elements right there. So again, kind of going back to here, when we look at the e-commerce example, all of these are very diverse, right? These are not similar images, right? They're not just taking this one right here, changing the color of the jacket and stuff like that. Each image is very different, very unique. It's going to speak differently to a different type of person, a different persona, all that kind of stuff. So that is how you want to be thinking about creative diversification, not like this. So let me offer you some quick guidelines before we wrap things up. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. But what we want to start thinking about is simple campaign structures. The days of really complex campaigns are gone. Honestly, they've been gone for a good while now, but I still saw a couple people kind of like hanging on to that, like, oh, I'm being super, super ninja right now, but it's gone, right? You want simple campaign structures. Honestly, in most cases, for most businesses, you're probably only going to need 1 campaign for every single objective. So again, gone are the days of 3 different sales campaigns or 3 different leads campaigns. You can probably just use the same exact campaign. There could be some exceptions to that, but again, simple is what you want to be thinking about. You're generally going to stick to broad targeting. Again, I'll do a follow-up video on when you may want to introduce some targeting right there. But in general, 80% of the time, just stick to broad, no targeting. And then you do want to launch new ads either weekly or bi-weekly. Obviously, this is going to depend a lot on your capacity, how much time you have. If you do have time, weekly is going to be great. If you're a little bit short on time, try to do bi-weekly. If you don't make that cadence, it's okay. Just do the best you can. But again, when you do this, make sure that you're testing a wide array of concepts. Again, not going back to my previous example where all I'm doing is switching headline, right? Make sure that there's some good diversification in there and spend way more time on your ads than any other part of your campaign. This has really flipped over the years. If you think about it, before you probably spend more time at the ad set level with the settings and the optimizations, but now you can fly through that, right? Campaign, choose your objective, ad set, broad targeting. You don't really do anything right there. And then have 90% of your time and effort go towards the creative diversification process, different ad copies, different hooks, different pain points, benefits, images, videos, carousels, all that kind of good stuff. So hopefully you found this helpful right here. It is a very significant shift. We're here towards the end of the year. So if you are already running ads for the holidays, you 100% want to start implementing all this information right now. If you're taking a little bit of a break, depending on the type of business you are, and then come January 1st, you're going to get rocking and rolling again, then you got time to plan for this. But this is the new shift, the new way forward for Meta ads. So I hope you found this information helpful. And if you found it overwhelming, guess what? You can have professionals manage and do all of this for you. My team and I, we're currently taking on clients, whether you're a small business with a small budget or a large business with a large budget, we have a package for you. So I'll have information down in the notes for you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.